Welcome back. Today we're going to do some cleanup work on the warp pylons, and then we're going to move on to the warp engines. If you find these tutorials helpful, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified of new videos. Warp engines are these large, round, cylindrical units that push the Enterprise through space at faster than light speeds. This shot, I think, is pieced together from a pan of the Enterprise in the Doomsday Machine. So it's color, it's got the warp engines, it's season 2, it's got, if you take a look, I mean, a couple of things. First, there's this rounded semi-transparent structure up front, the warp domes. Then the warp engine itself actually gets slightly larger. It bubbles up, and there are three attachments that on the original model were actually leather with a round metal clip, like a button, in the center. And there were 3 of them fairly equispaced around the warp engine. It starts to go back, and although it's hard to tell, you can certainly tell it on Alan's plans. The front area of the warp engines, especially right here, is larger in diameter. In other words, it gets smaller the further back you go. There is this dip here, and then there are 3 cylindrical, rounded, they look like radiator fins. There are these 3 pods underneath each engine. They're somewhat rectangularish or kind of like a brick with one end, the outside end, shorter than the end that's up against the warp engine. On the outside, except for the banner, the center of the warp engine is fairly plain. There's a couple of, again, what look like vents on the back. The ones on top have a little extension out the front. There's another pod, similar but not the same, to the 3 pods in the front. There's 2, one on each side. As you can tell, there's one on the inside here on this other engine. There's another cutout similar to this, except there's no vents, and it's much, much thinner. The warp engine kind of ends here. Then there's this end cap, which in the original pilot on the 3-foot version had a rectangular-ish section that kind of ran down the middle. For Where No Man Has Gone Before, that was replaced with multiple holes that looked like little rocket exhausts. And then for the production for the series production, those were all gone and replaced with a sphere that took up about 2/3 of the inner surface. On the inside of the warp engines, and we'll be making them both the same, there is this interesting cutout detail. Now this shape does not get smaller as it goes backwards. It stays the same width, or the same height, if you will. It's rounded at both front and back, but this intersection here that comes down is not rounded. It's actually fairly flat. So we'll be doing, and then there's a grill here. There's something that bears a resemblance to these fins here, only it doesn't have this washboard in the middle here. It's actually got underneath it more grill, and it's got an interesting squarish, kind of like these pods, a squarish front with 2 cylindrical add-ons. I'll be showing you all of that, but that's the outer structure. Inside the warp engine dome, that semi-transparent area, there were a bunch of pieces of broken glass put in, pieces of broken mirror, and there was this engine that spun what I always thought were just vanes, or like fan blades. But according to Gary Kerr, what that was actually spinning was another dome, a transparent dome that had gaffer's tape taped on the surface of that dome, and it spun that dome around. So as far as we're concerned, those blades are essentially infinitely thin. They're no thicker than tape. And then, although it's hard to see on this black and white photograph, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 readily visible, but there's actually 10. So 9 and 10 are here. 10, well, nails. Not to put too fine a point on it. Or they could be screws, but I think they're nails. And they're just nailed into the surface of the inside of the warp dome. Now, why are they there? They don't actually serve any practical purpose for warp drives, but they do for the illusion of movies or television. And that is, what these did was you hung Christmas tree lights on them, and then you turned those Christmas tree lights on and off in a particular sequence while this rotor is spinning around that inner dome with the tape that looks like fan blades, and it made for a very interesting warp effect. By the way, 1, 2, and down here where it's hard to see, 3, are those spots where you had kind of like the end of a belt, pieces of leather. So they were squarish in the back, they were square, straight on the sides, and then they rounded when they got out on the warp engine, and they snapped onto that plexiglass globe. When they did the reconstruction of the ship, this latest reconstruction for the Smithsonian, I'm recording this in 2018, so I think it was just last year. That was one thing that they didn't actually stay true to. They put in, as a part of the dome, extensions that looked just like the dome. It was plastic and thick and slotted into here. And I think what they did was they put magnets in, rare earth magnets that were fairly strong, and so you can just lift off the cap. It's not easy, but you can. And then when you put it back in place, it just snaps back in place. So, I mean, they did it so that there's less wear and tear over the course of time on the model, but it does not look exactly like the original model. So here's another shot, and you can still see everything that I was talking about before. And you can actually see that kind of squarish thing here, and here. There are 2 round cylindrical add-ons that, there's no more detail, so they don't look like screws, but they just look like objects coming out, and it was just done for detail. This is a close-up shot, and you can actually see that little leather snap here. You can't see it with any great detail. And on top, there's a tiny running light that, unless you were a real crazy fan, you might not even have known these were there. There's even 4 of these tiny little things that are almost unnoticeable that are on the saucer. And here's where this starts to get interesting. So this should just be straight, okay? So, I mean, it's rounded in the front, but these were essentially, sanded 2x4s with a column in the center, except they didn't always have a column cut into them. If you look here, you can actually see a wire on the inside of the starboard warp pylon. So this wire here, which they tried to hide, actually goes down to the ship and is what comes into the warp engine and powers these lights and the spinner. Here's another shot, and you can start to see some of the colors for the Christmas tree lights they had. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 white or orange lights. There was a bluish light here, and blue and green lights here, and red, orange, and some other colors. I mean, we'll walk through all of that. Here is where they lay that out. So this author, not me, whoever created this picture, said that these are actually yellow. I don't know. They looked an awful lot like they were white and lighting up inside a colored dome, which is kind of peach colored, which is why in the dark areas it looks kind of reddish, but where it's bright, it looks like there's another color. With some of the desaturation that happened with the multiple exposures for making the effects back then, these things changed. This author also is saying that this is green and orange and green again. But some of this stuff was actually blue, and there was green that would appear. They did not always stay the same colors. And that's because I think on several of these, they had 2, possibly more, different colored bulbs. And believe it or not, left and right did not match. They were not the same colors in the same spots going off on the same sequence. I've seen people make jokes about my warp sequence when they see a still picture. Why does that look like that? That's because I created a sequence to mimic what it looks like when it's moving, and a lot of the publicity shots of the Enterprise are either black and white or exposures where they've got a lot of the lights on. In any case, if you had any doubts, you can actually see the nails here and over here, and you can even see that they didn't even bother to have them all straight, or at least they didn't survive all straight to the end of the series. Also, we are looking at the inside of the starboard nacelle, and I believe I've mentioned this earlier. This inside detail here, this what's supposed to be this rounded cutout here, is actually just painted on. You can literally see the paint peeling off here. It's an illusion. It's not even cut in. It was done, I think it was done specifically for the trouble with tribbles. Now, this is fairly close to the port detail, except they didn't even bother with the 2 plugs that come out. They do have a bit of the detail that comes out of it that looks like a vent without the washboard. But you can also see those rounded details I was telling you about that look like vents on the inside here and over here on this warp engine. Again, somebody decided to try and tell you what they think were the correct colors. This one's a little better because at least it lists the 5 main lights: 1, 2, 3, 4, and they only did 4 as white lights. Then orange and orange, orange. So and blue down here. So this is closer, but again, it's not perfect. It looks like this one goes back and forth between orange and blue, which is good. At least they have some of that showing up. But you'll actually, I'm going to show you in a minute that there were actually multiple colors. All right, so I told you that there's this tiny little light here on the top of the warp engines, here and here. And there's also a tiny little light here on the saucer, and where you can't see it in the shadow right here, there's one on the side as well, and there's 2 over on the other side. You can actually see the outer the outer warp engine dome, which actually was like frosted white. Inside is the frosted salmon colored dome with the tape on it to make it look like there are blades. Underneath that are the lights that turn on and off almost randomly. And then here's 1, 2, and then down where you can't see it, the 3rd snap. Same on the other side, but you'll notice the lights are not even being turned on in the same sequence. This is from Where No Man Has Gone Before. The second pilot, you can tell because solid warp engine with spikes. It was also used again as the ISS Enterprise in Mirror Mirror, the episode Mirror Mirror. Okay, I'm going to show you where this sequence comes from. I do believe this is a screen capture from Elan of Troyes, although it could also be from the beginning of the Tholian Web, because that's actually the same sequence. They shot this long approach to the Enterprise which most of it got used in Elan of Troyes. And then they used they just never got real close to the bridge of the ship. They cut. In the Tholian web, you actually go from like midpoint in that sequence up to the bridge because they got the camera fairly close. And we'll take a look at one of those sequences. But you'll be able to see some of the colors of the lights. So the white one in the center is off. The one next to it is on, and it does indeed look orange in this. But it also tends to look red. And over here you can see a different pattern of lights. The center one is on. The one to the middle of the engine is on. They almost have that reflected here, except the center one isn't on. And then others are on and off throughout the center. The 5 white ones tended to be on the most. If you like, we can make them flicker. It does help with the illusion. Here's another shot. This one, of course, is from the immunity syndrome. You can actually see blue or green here for a colored light. And again, from the immunity syndrome, we got really close to the Enterprise. And we saw nice pictures of the warp engines there. And this is from an amazing sequence in Metamorphosis. So I'm going to play this.
Captain's log, stardate 4307.1. Approaching Starbase 6 for a much-needed period of rest and recreation.
Here's the shot from Elan of Troyes. At least this is working. So you can actually see lights flickering on and off with different colors, even in the same spot. And that left and right were not duplicates of each other. All right, a nice shot from Bread and Circuses, and you can see those colors. So if you want, you can, this is mine, of course, we can actually go in and try and map them out. But basically, you know that there's multiple colors. There's 5 white lights arranged in kind of like a pentagon with 5 colored lights in between them all. They flicker on and off, and they don't necessarily match left and right. Okay, so let's open our tutorial. We've got most of the ship done, or at least how I'd like to think about it. We've got most of the structure of the ship done. But everything that we've learned up until now is going to be used for making the warp engines. I'm sorry, one moment please. Sorry, that was work. Now, before we go actually any further, I want to grab my warp engine pylon, and I'm going to move it to the second upper layer. And then we're going to go to the second upper layer here, and I'm going to hit Tab and Z. Now, of course, all I can think of are puns. The Tab and Z bridge. Ha ha ha. What you may notice is I went Control R, I put in a line, and I moved it right up near the edge of the warp pylon. I did the same thing down at the bottom. Because these were creating render errors, it didn't know what to do with the geometry. Because generally speaking, or what I guess I should say normally speaking, what I do is I cap my pylons. In other words, you could do without this line if you went to, say, faces and either deleted this face. Okay, now it knows exactly what to do with the geometry, but I hate leaving something open like that. So I would probably do that trick that was shown to us by, who was that shown to us by? Was that Der Romer? I think. In any case, yeah, I would highlight, say, these 4 faces, F, and then pick any one edge and hit F until it closed, and then hit the other edge and see what we can do. The thing is, it's not exactly the same on this side. So we would probably have to do a manual intervention here. Actually, I guess not. It winds up being the same number, and then you close it. So you still get that little weird render error thing, so maybe it's just best to leave in my little extra row of verts right near the top, that kind of girdles that render error, and besides that'll be inside the warp engine, but it's definitely needed down below. Since this is actually fairly close to the surface, any render error that's above this line shows up when you're actually doing your rendering. Kind of like, so let me tab out of this, and we're going to include one and some lights and cameras and so on. So, maybe I don't have on edge split. I do have on edge split, so I'm going to kill that. There we are. I've got my mirror on. I guess I could apply that, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to move. No, that's not doing it. Mirror. So, all right, what the heck? I'm going to apply that. I'm going to apply that. I'm going to edge split. No, it's just not doing it. All right. All right. It looks like we've got to address some stuff on the warp pylons first. So I'm going to reload mine because I don't want all those changes to take place. I am going to move this, however. I'm going to move this to the second layer. I'm going to go to the second layer. Tab. And it looks like, do we have them on all of them? We have them on all of them. All right. So my mirror is still in effect because this is my original copy. And you'll notice where we don't have that set of render errors is down here on the bottom, because we've got something connecting the outer lip of the window to some physical structure on our pylon. So, what in the world? Sorry for the jump there. I don't know why. It just did not want to let me rotate for a minute. Anyway, I'm going to rotate my view so I'm kind of looking at that port head on, or really close to it. I honestly don't know what's going on with this. In any case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to grab this edge here, and I'm going to delete just the edge. All right, now we can rebuild everything, but the important part is to do this. So I'm going to go back to vertex. I'm going to select this vert, this vert, this vert, and this vert. I'm going to replace the face. Okay, there it is. It's back. Now, we want to keep track. Oh, that's right. I also have a video game loading. We want to keep track of the lower section of the window, because I don't want to attach anything to the lower section. What I am going to do is I'm going to make a face here. On the top, I'm going to grab this vert. The last vert on the top, or the first vert into the curve, the same one on the opposite side and the top. And hit F for face. Okay, great. So that's good. As long as I'm on the top. Am I on the top? I was trying to get the top. Good, good, got the top. All right, so that will work in the end. All right, marvelous. Now we're going to do the same thing here, keeping in mind that we want to see the top. So 1, 2, 3, face, 1, 2, 3, face, and so on. We're going to fill this in. Okay, cool. So now that's filled in. We're going to do the same on the side. So we can make a face here, corner, first one in, corner, face. All right, so all we're left with is this little section here where we can make a bunch of triangles. So 1, 2, 3, face. 1, 2, 3, face. 1, 2, 3, face, and so on. Okay. So we have added in geometry for that window. Remove doubles. Add an edge split modifier. That takes care of some of it, but not all. So let's go to mesh, normals, recalculate outside. I don't think I've ever had this happen before. How very interesting. All right, so what we're also going to do is we're going to apply the same fix that we did to the engineering deck. All right. I don't know if this will work, so... Oh. You're not seeing everything I'm doing. All right. So I'm right mouse clicking to pick one vert, alt, click, and it goes halfway around. And then I'm going to alt, shift alt, pick the next vert, and finish. So now I've got all around the top. I haven't tried this before, but let's E, right mouse click, S for scale, and just the tiniest scaling out, A, and that did it. All right, looks like it's created a little problem here. Ah, yes, of course, because I don't need something going from this vert inside. So let's zoom in on this area here. Yeah, we've created a weird face. So I'm going to grab this edge, X edge. All right, that's cool. That's good. So now we've got an edge going from here to here. If I go to vertices, you can see that it's made a nice face there. And then all we're going to do is we're going to fill in this this face here, 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 and here. Face, just be careful not to get any of the internal verts, and we're going to do the same for the rest, just like before. See, I'll show you this one. Okay, so I want here, here, and here. So that's shift and right mouse clicking, picking three verts. Okay, so pick a vert, shift, right mouse click, and I only want the outer edge, F. And if it helps, by the way, you can zoom in, you can split your screen, whoops, split the screen, okay. So now I'm really close to, I can certainly see my outer edge here, and I'm gonna go just down to this one vertex here. So I picked it, the next two, face, pick this. Now, let me get rid of T here, I don't need it. Shift, right mouse click on the next two, face, shift, right mouse click on the next two, face, and so on. Face. Alright, cool. Got two more to go. Pick the wrong one. There we go. That would have made an interesting face all on its own there. Click. Right mouse click. Right mouse click. Face. And then finish up filling these in. Of course, again, we want to make sure that we're using the outermost lip. So I'm going to delete this edge. Looks like I'm going to be going all the way around. and fixing this all the way around. You do the same and come back. I deleted a line here, and I found that this whole face deleted itself. So I'm going to put it back. And then I'm going to continue putting back in all my edges. So again, keep your eye out for missing faces. Like now I've got a missing face up here. As a matter of fact, I realized if I'm putting in all this geometry, I really don't even need this one line connecting halfway through the window up to the end. So first, I'm going to get rid of this one edge. Actually, I wonder if I can dissolve the edge. Dissolve it. I want to pick this tiny little edge in here. X, I want to dissolve that too. It works. Okay, good. All right, cool. Maintains our geometry. And then if you need to quickly get rid of all of your outside edges, you can select them and just delete them, but it might not be necessary. Okay, I have finished putting in the rest of my geometry. I got rid of those two extra lines, one here and one over here. They just weren't necessary. I'm going to select everything, remove doubles, okay, mesh, normals, recalculate outside, and ta-da! It works. All right, cool. Sadly, you're going to have to do that to the other two windows. That way we don't get these weird render errors. Come back when you are done. I have an idea I want to explore. It may not be necessary to create the extra lip. This is the next window up, where obviously we have the same problems. We've got this weird render error here. So I'm actually going to grab these two verts, shift, right mouse click, X, just delete them. All right, cool. It gets rid of the face around the window, and it gets rid of these two edges as well as the face here. So I'm going to create a face here and here. By the way, this is actually similar. If you wanted to, for some reason, get really close in on, say, any window or group of windows on your model, and you want to put a movie behind it or maybe a highly detailed room, you could create a full window with thickness right around the edges, any details that you want. I would base them on screen captures from the original series. And then you could put them right here. And from the outside, it should look great in any case. All right, so now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the biggest face on each side. So inner verts on your window and the two nearest corners. Again, the corner, two inner verts on the top of the window, face on the other side, corner, two inner verts, corner, face, corner, two inner verts on the top of the window, only corner, face. Okay, great. Now, go in and fill these, or at least wait for me to do it and see if that gets rid of the render errors. Hang on, I'll be right back. All right, I've got one corner left, so I don't think I'm going to need this split area anymore. I'm going to join and pick this. I'm going to rotate so I can get this area on my screen and fill in this last window here. Okay, so we've got, now again, yes, I realize these are all triangles, that if you ever do professional work, you kind of want to not have triangles. You'll want everything to be quads so that they divide easily. All right, so there's our window A. I'm going to select A, remove double, so there shouldn't be anything. And mesh, normals, recalculate. Ha! Did not work. So we are going to want that. We are going to want that lip. So again, I'll do it once more, and then I'm going to have to go back and I'm going to have to recreate this geometry here. So I'm going to deselect this. I'm going to pick one vert, Alt, right mouse click on another vert. It should go all the way around. Excellent. We're going to look at it as face on as we can. We're going to hit E to extrude. Looks like actually we could leave it like that, but I'm going to scale it just a tiny fraction. A, tab. And as far as I'm concerned, we're done. All right, cool. You've got one more to go, one more window to go, and then come back. Okay, I selected my row of verts around the outside, and then scale it out a tad. Let's remove doubles, mesh, normals, recalculate outside. A, tab. And yeah, it looks good. Okay, so we've got nice clean cuts for all the windows on both, of course, because they're still mirrored, or the mirror modifier is applied, so anything we do to one goes to the other. Just a brief recap, we put a line around both ends of the warp pylons to reduce those weird render errors, and we did the same with each of the windows. There is an extra line right around the outside lip, and geometry that connects the window to the rest of the pylon. All right, cool. Tab. Let's move these back to the first layer. And now finally, a little over almost 40 minutes in, it's time for some warp engines. At the very least, we're going to put in placeholders for right now. So Shift S, move our cursor to center, which is over here, of course. And even though these are going to be just placeholders, although we might wind up using them as the real thing. So add, and we're going to go to mesh and cylinder. And I like to get fairly close on some of my renders. And think about this. When we did the back end of the shuttle bay, and we put in the windows either for the window above the shuttle bay or the windows below that act as the landing lights, we added extra geometry before we did those cuts, so that there'd be something for the cuts to attach to. And that's probably why on our warp pylons our windows didn't work out so well. I didn't have you add enough geometry. But we've got the geometry in there now. I'm going to take this, and we're going to do lots of cuts and lots of work on these warp engines. So I'm going to take this set of vertices. I'm going to go to at least 100. All right. So that almost looks smooth already. We're going to hit smooth. And for right now, we're going to throw in an edge split. All right. That's fine. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees. I'm going to grab it and move it somewhere back here on the warp engine. All right, so now scale it down. Oh, make sure you're on bounding box. And user Redbeard gave an extraordinarily useful tip. He's come up with several, but especially on Windows, this should work. I keep having you hop back and forth between different pivot points, usually the 3D cursor and the bounding box center. And his tip is you can use the period and the comma keys to jump between the two. So, oh, it's not working for me. Oh, there you go. Okay, so comma, bounding box center, period. You're now centered on the 3D cursor. So, I mean, that's extraordinarily useful. That's wonderful. Anyway, I'm on bounding box center, so I'm only affecting my warp engine here, my little cylinder. We're going to scooch in fairly close. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this up front, because this line right here should be the widest part of the entire warp engine. So I'm going to get fairly close to that. Try and center on that, scale to it. All right, that looks pretty good. Maybe just scale it up just a tad. I may have gone a little too large. That looks good. All right, now, proof, Eric. We demand proof. All right, so I'm going to tab into this, Z to see through everything, A to deselect everything, B or C to select all the verts on the end here, and we're going to move this down to the end. I don't want you to, now here, I don't know if you noticed, but up front, I did not go all the way out to the dome. I want you to come to about here, and there's this little section that we will add later that like holds the warp end cap. So that's good. We're going to deselect. Oh, well, we could deselect, but we don't have to. B, because what I want to do now is, while still with bounding box center, I want to scale these down. So S for scale, and bring it down kind of like that. Now it looks like, according to Alan's plans, this is actually not in line with, we could always just throw a cylinder in there on the end if we want. So if you want to do that, you could move this here and scale appropriately. And we could always add a cylinder right here. So whichever way you want to do it, there's no wrong way for that. That's perfectly fine. And we're going to do the same out here. See, we've got your verts coming. I guess I don't have them going far enough forward. I guess I should have them right about there. Okay, cool. So this could work as a warp engine in our plans. I'm going to hit 3, and not that it matters. I could move it to one side or the other, but I'm not going to. What we're going to do is we're going to use this. We're going to work on one warp engine. I'm going to make it the starboard side. Then when we're done, we're going to mirror it, just like we've done with a lot of these parts. So make one, get 2 out of it that are mirror images of each other. So that's great. Now, if we're going to do that, I'm going to tap back into this. Nothing is selected. If you have something selected, hit A or A twice in order to get out of it. I'm going to pick B. I'm going to pick these forward verts. I'm going to hit E to extrude. It already is going to extrude it in the X direction, but if it doesn't for you, hit X on your keyboard and then just move this forward until you're at the forward line where it meets the dome. Of course, it's too wide, so we're going to hit S for scale, and we're going to bring this down to match that angle. Okay, good. A to deselect. Z and tab. All right, so believe it or not, we've actually got a general shape of the base of the warp engine. And it's got most of the features that we want. So now we can do a lot of cutting. Another reason for all the geometry is we're going to be doing a lot of cutting. And when we do that, we're going to want geometry to cut into so that we don't have to go in and do a lot of manual corrections where we get render errors. So now you could put, say, a cube or a cylinder right here. But again, I want to try something. So Control R, left click once. Oops. I want to center a little better. All right, cool. So I should be able to see where hit Control R. Left mouse click once. Drag this forward till you're at the back end of this area here. Okay. Control R. And at the forward of this area here, A. Now you could go in, you could delete all of these, or I'm going to try something a little different. I want to grab these edges, so I'm in edge select mode, B, just run right down through the center, and I want to try this. Let's see if it works. E for extrude, S for scale, and it does it. It scales it inside. I want it to come down to where those kind of meet. But I've got a couple of problems. First, of course, when you do scale, it scales in every direction. So now I'm going to scale X, and I'm going to move them. Actually, do I want to do that? Yeah, I guess so. Move them out so that we've got, so that they're pretty straight. A to deselect. Z, and you'll notice that we've still got our external ones here. So we don't want that. Now, I'm not in invisible mode, so I'm going to hit B. And I'm still in edge select, so I'm going to grab all of these edges. Control 1, B, A, B, oh dear, B, come on, there we go. So now I'm gonna rotate around it, make sure I've got everything top and bottom, and I do not. B, there we go. I was missing one on the bottom, and I've got all of them on the top. Okay, 1, and this is going to be interesting. X edges. Okay, looks like in theory it worked. All of my edges are there, all of my vertices are there, but no faces. That's interesting. All right, so instead of duplicating everything, we're cutting those in. I guess I'm going to tab out, Shift S, cursor to selected, so that should be right here at our origin, which should be in the very middle of the whole thing. A to deselect the warp engine, Shift A, add a cube. Okay, it's going to be too big. We're going to scale that down. Make sure it's at least larger than the warp engine itself. Scale X, and we're going to move it into position here. Scale X. Scale X. Okay, so now I'm going to take my warp engine, I'm going to add a Boolean, move it above the edge split. I don't want intersect, I want difference, and we're going to pick our cube. Okay, great, it's done. Apply, move this out of the way, move. Okay, so Z, and that's interesting. Looks like it made a face on the inner side of the front, but I'm not sure if it made a, I guess it did. Made a face here. Easy way to tell. Tab in, yeah, made faces. Okay, we're good. Now, we've still got, hopefully we've still got our center mark, but it doesn't matter. You could even grab, say, here, watch this. This will be fun. Z, I'm going to make sure nothing is selected. B, I'm going to grab all of these verts, and I'm going to hit Shift S, cursor to select it again. Our cursor is now right in the middle of these selected vertices. So I'm going to hit Tab out of it, A to deselect my warp engine, Shift A to add a mesh, add a cylinder, It's still at 100. We're going to rotate 90, scale down. All right, so now I want this to be about the size of where these all meet on the floor. Oh, that's why that didn't work, Eric. There we go. Scale. That'll do. So that's about right, except we're going to scale X. And I really don't need it to be any longer than where it'll just go in and match up. Put it past the inner side of both walls. And I forgot to hit smooth shading and edge split. Okay, good. That actually looks decent. We're going to do something similar when we add in all those I don't even know what to call them, radiator fins or something. Heck, we could add them in now. As a matter of fact, with your cylinder selected, Shift D, scale X. Okay. What you want is you want it to be about the width of any one of these. So scale X. Not shabby, not shabby. I'm going to tab into it. A to deselect all the verts. I want to select, so B, and select all the verts in the front. Scale. And we've made something that kind of matches that vent or whatever it is. So I'm actually going to move this forward. All right. So now, here's the big one. I want to scale this. So grab X. I want to scale this so that this top matches this for now. So scale, bring it down. That's about right. All right, so not bad. So what we're going to do is we're going to Shift D, grab X, Shift D, grab X, Shift D, grab X. Okay. If I go to Z, I've now got those ribbed vanes or cooling units or whatever the heck those are in place. They are the right size. They are the same width as the warp engine itself, right? Matches up with Alan's drawings fairly well. And you know what? Let's see here. I'm going to go grab this inner cylinder here. Shift D. Grab X. Scale. Make it fit that cylinder, so scale X. About right, and then of course I'm going to Shift D, scale it down a little bit, and then scale X. And make sure it hits both of these. A, Z. We've actually got the outline of the engine itself. Not bad. We're going to stop there today, and then we'll have our next session is going to show how to make the back end of the warp nacelle, this cap, and we'll probably even put in this ball structure here, and then we'll do the ball structure up front, and then we'll move into cutting out little bits and details throughout the whole thing. So like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications when I post new YouTube how to build the Enterprise in Blender 3D. Oh, and before I go, you've put in a lot of work in this. File, save, or save as and overwrite your original copy, or file, save as, and name it something else, so that if something goes bad, you don't lose this. But before we go, I want to grab layer 1, and you know what? That's almost the Enterprise. Not too bad. Job well done, guys, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.